Hello everyone, Luxuria Moon Goddess, and today we are going to be discussing the pillars of power. So, I'm going to be talking about the four pillars of power. So, what are the four pillars of power? The four pillars of power are beauty, money, intelligence, and status. So, I'm going to be talking about how these powers affect the lives of people and how you can obtain these pillars of power. So, the pillars of power. So, starting off with the first one, beauty. Beauty is power. How do we know this? Because people are always talking about pretty privilege. So, we know that in this society, beautiful people do have power. If you look good, you wield power. You wield sexual power. You have the power of attractiveness. You're able to attract different people into your life. People gravitate to you. You're able to obtain more suitors than, let's say, someone who's not as beautifully blessed. So, beauty is power in itself, especially as a woman, because we know that women, like for example, one example of how women can use their beauty as a superpower is how, for example, younger women or women who appear very youthful, very beautiful, are able to obtain a man who's going to provide financially. We already know this. This isn't anything new, and it's happened, in society for many, many, many years. It's not anything new. Now, with men, men can also have power using their attractiveness as well. It's not as common, but with men who are very attractive, they are able to obtain certain women because there are types of women out there that, they want a super attractive man who's, 6 feet tall, muscular, very masculine looking, da 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 da. And so they're able to use their level of attractiveness. Usually they're able to attract a woman who is more of how they say a pygmesia. He's super attractive and he knows how to use his plus, especially if he's very charming. He's going to be able to get exactly what he wants from you if you're a pygmesia. He has the looks, he knows how to be charming, and he knows how to get what he wants from you. So, beauty and attractiveness. So, beauty, when you're beautiful, another example of, using beauty to your advantage. People who are very extremely attractive or fit into a certain type of beauty standard, they can become models, of course. We have models, supermodels, runway models, or what have you. So, when you have beauty, this with beauty is a type of power. This is probably one of the easiest powers to obtain, believe it or not. So, why is it easy to obtain and use this power? If you have the power of beauty, this pillar of power, you can actually obtain the other pillars of power. You can obtain success. You can obtain money. And you can, believe it or not, obtain intelligence. And I'm going to explain why that is. With the power of beauty, let's say for status, if you're very beautiful, you can attract a certain person, you can attract someone of a higher status than yourself, and be able to be elevated to a higher social circle. With the power of beauty, you can obtain money, of course, because, like I just said in the example before, if you're extremely beautiful, attractive, you can get, job as a model. Or you can get a role in acting. Actors, a lot of actors tend to be very attractive. You can also, believe it or not, obtain intelligence, and here's why. With the power of beauty, like I said before, you can obtain more people. If the person who is very attractive isn't already intelligent themselves, they can simply just attract someone who's willing to teach them, someone who's very attracted to them, whether it's a man, woman, or what have you. Someone who's attractive, someone who's very talkative, and someone who's willing to give that knowledge to you. So so the power of beauty is the easiest one to obtain. Now, moving on to the next pillar of power. The second pillar of power is money. And of course, money makes people powerful. When you have a lot of money, you're able to gain much more resources because you have more spending power. You have more money, more income at your disposal. So, with money, you can buy more. You have more options than the average person. Someone with money, they can afford more than just, let's say, a Toyota. They can afford the Toyota. They can afford the Lincoln. They can afford the Rolls Royce. They can afford the Porsche. They have much more options and much more power because they have the money to do much more than the average person. Now, this pillar of power is a little more difficult to obtain for the obvious reason. Most people commonly make money just with having one stream of income, one job, which that's fine for most people, but you have to stop and think. If you want to have the true power of money, you're going to either need a really good high paying job, which that takes years to advance in a career, or you're going to need multiple streams of income, which is probably more of the easier way to become, the true power of money. Like if you want to be a millionaire, billionaire, or what have you, you have to have different and multiple streams of income. Now, with the power of money, you can spend. People with money, believe it or not, when you have money, you can also make more connections because this ties into the other pillar of power, which is social status. So, when you are upper class, higher level income, you are able to put yourself in a different social category, different social class, different social status than the average person. So, think about it. The people that millionaires hang out with are going to be different than, say, who middle class people hang out with. How different class of people than, people who are poorer, who they interact with. So, with the power of money, you are able to obtain a different social circle. Also, with power of money, when you have money, you can generate more money. Let me repeat that. When you have money, you can generate more money. This kind of ties into multiple streams of income. You can invest. You can start your own business. You can sell your own products, make your own products. Money makes you more versatile. You don't have to, and the real thing, especially with money and why it's so powerful, when you have money, especially if you're one of those people, you're an entrepreneur with your own business, you don't have to be tied to one specific job. You're not slaving away at the average job, a 9 to 5, with some manager breathing down your neck. You literally have your own business. You are your own boss. You are your own CEO. So, with that being said, you don't have to report to anybody. And depending on what type of business that you're starting, what type of business that you're running, you can, depending on how many people you need to hire and what type of business it is, you could be claiming much more money, much more income, even after taxes or what have you, because most of the money is coming to you and not being paid out to other co-workers, your manager, da 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 da. Mm-hmm. So, the power of money. Money is very powerful, and it's no wonder why that many people are after the pursuit of money. Now, moving on to the next pillar of power, status. So, we talked about it a little bit with excuse me. We talked about that with money a little bit. Your social status does matter. Are you lower class? Are you middle class? Are you upper class? Are you a one percenter? Your status, who you are in society, is a type of power. Think about it. The type of power that I'm really thinking of with this one, for example, is the power of just your name. It's like when we hear Oprah Winfrey, we know who that is. It's like when we hear Elon Musk, we know who it is. It's like when we hear, Michael Jordan. The vast majority of people know these people just by their name. So, with your social status, depending on who you are, depending on what your role in society is, you can make many different connections just by who you are in society. So, that is a power in itself. Social connections can take you further into your career. Social connections can get you to a higher level of whatever you're trying to achieve because people know your reputation. People know who you are. People may want to associate with you. It's like when going back to the example of celebrities. Somebody, let's say there's a company, they want to advertise a product or whoever, and they want, let's say, just for an example, maybe they want Mariah Carey or whoever. They're going to want you just based on who you are. And guess what? This ties back into the pillar of power of money because, oh, this person wants to work with me. I can get brand deals. I can do advertising. I can do acting. I can do so much more because I've became someone in society. Now, how do you get this? Get the pillar of power of status. For the average person, you're just going to have to, what they say, make a name for yourself. Whether it's in a certain industry, your career, or again, becoming a celebrity, if that's what you want to do. So you have to, for the average person, that's going to be the way for them to obtain that type of status. Now, some people are able to have status with, really with luck, depending on, let's say, for example, the family that you're born into. You could simply be born into wealth and people know who you are. You're born and then they'll know you as the daughter of such and such whoever. Depending on if you choose to do so, you can then use your connections just by the family that you're born in, just by your parents. You could use them to create a name for yourself, but really because you're born into that family, they're already gonna know you. This is such and such daughter. Da 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 da. So you can be born into it, or you have to kind of work your way, build a reputation, so that you have the power of social status. Now, the last pillar of power is intelligence. If you are, and when I'm talking about intelligence, I'm not saying you have to be necessarily a genius. You don't have to be, not like Einstein or whatever. But if you are very smart, oh my, especially in today's times with the way, the way most people are acting, because a lot of people don't even have common sense. If you have intelligence, you can run game on people. I'm not even talking about, and especially, I'm going to make another side note with intelligence. If you have this, you can obtain all the pillars of power. If you're smart enough, you can obtain beauty. You can obtain social status. You can obtain money because you have this level of intelligence. All that you need is literally right in here. Depending on how you think, you can obtain all the pillars of power. Now, intelligence can be deadly, which is why if you're intelligent, use that knowledge, obtain knowledge, work that knowledge to your advantage. And I would say intelligence is probably my favorite pillar of power next to beauty. So, with the power of intelligence, if you are, and again, I'm not talking about you have to be Einstein or anything like that, if you just have above average intelligence, then most of the people wherever you live, you can use that intelligence to, you can outsmart people. You can, use the power of charm. You can learn, especially if you're someone who is curious and loves to learn, you could be filling yourself with so much knowledge. So much knowledge. And you're going to have the power to do many things. Because if you're really smart, if you can learn quickly, that makes you better than the next person. And again, like I said, you can outsmart people. You can trick people. You can figure out how to manipulate people into doing what it is that you need to do. You see what I'm saying? With the power of intelligence. And like I said, if you're intelligent, you can obtain the other pillars of power. You can obtain beauty. For example, if you have the power of intelligence, how can you obtain beauty? Well, for example, you can learn how to do makeup really well. You can learn good skincare. If you don't want to go that route, you want to go the route of plastic surgery, then you can use your intelligence, figure out how to make that money. Do you have a good business idea? Are you smart enough to get other people to do the work for you? When you have that level of intelligence, people, and especially in, I want to say especially in America because that's where I live, especially in America, people are intimidated by intelligence. Their intelligence. They're intimidated. And I know this for a fact from experience because it's kind of like, for example, when you're younger or you're in school and people calling you, oh, you're a nerd, da, 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 da. It's like, I don't care what people say. They call me a nerd, whatever. I'm going to use my intelligence to my advantage because I know I can get much further. I can learn so much. I can do all of these different things because I'm smart enough to learn it. I can grasp the knowledge quickly. I can do the assignment. I understand the assignment. So, you can see I'm excited about this pillar of power because I'll be using this one to my advantage the most. Yes. So, with that being said, if you, and again, if you don't have any other pillars of power, this is the best route. So, now what happens if you don't have any, I'm one of these people, or excuse me, let me rephrase that. Let's say, well, I'm someone, I'm not beautiful, I don't have any money, I'm not that smart, and, I don't have social status. What do I do to obtain power in society? How can I obtain power? Well, what I would recommend, if you're someone you want to become powerful in society, or you want to use powers to your advantage in everyday life, either obtain intelligence or either obtain beauty. These are the easiest two pillars of power to obtain. Like I said, with beauty, if you're a woman, or even if you're a man and you like makeup, learn to do makeup. Develop good skincare. Exercise. Maintain your body weight. Da 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 da. Beauty is by far the easiest one to get. And when you think of beauty, I'm not talking about you have to look like a stereotypical beauty of standard, depending on where you live. You just need to look good for yourself. You have your genetics for a reason. A lot of people, especially in today's society, it's like everyone wants to erase their features. And we have everybody walking around looking the same, looking cookie cutter, doing their makeup the same. Everybody's getting a nose job. Everybody wants to, have a BBL. Da, da, da. No, that's not what I'm talking about. You can work your beauty advantage with what you got. Use the power of your genetics. Use what your parents gave you. Use what your ancestors gave you. You see how I look. I'm not the average looking person in America by far. I'm only 5 feet tall. I got a ballpoint nose, but none of that deters me from looking my best because I know the power of beauty and I have learned throughout the years how to enhance my beauty. What do I need to do to enhance it? What do I need to do to look better? What works for me? No, 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 no. And then intelligence. This is going to be the second easiest pillar of power for you to obtain if you don't have any of the pillars of power. Now, depending on My motto with intelligence is unless you have a legit learning disability, you can increase your intelligence, believe it or not. Really, the biggest thing that I've figured out with intelligence is really just your way of thinking. Sometimes, if you just change the way that you think, that can already make you smarter because you've changed the way that you think. You're not one of these people who, when you have a problem, you just give up easily. You know, you know how to think, you know how to use it to your advantage. So, knowledge. Seek the knowledge. If you're not someone who's very smart, you need to be figuring out how can you seek knowledge. If you have a problem, stop and think. Okay, I have this issue going on in my life and I need to figure out how to solve it. Well, what can you do first? Seek the knowledge. Seek relevant knowledge to the problem that you have at hand. Yes. Seek relevant knowledge. Be someone, and another skill that is good for people to have is reading. Now, I'm not talking about reading like little magazines or, random little stupid things like that. You need to be reading things, and I don't mean just reading random books either, but you do need to read books that are number one, books that resonate with you, and two, books that have knowledge that's really going to help you in life. Be reading, seek the knowledge. Use Google. You don't even really have to be. This is the thing with intelligence. We are living in the 21st century with all of this technology. We have the power of Google. So you don't even have to necessarily go to a library anymore. You can simply, and it's real simple. This is why, and I don't mean to be rude or anything like that. I don't understand why we have so many people, stupid people in this world. Because literally, if you are stupid in today's, or you feel that you're stupid in today's times, literally pull out your phone. You don't even have to grab the computer or the laptop. Grab your phone. You got a question, da 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 da. I need help with, whatever problem. All you have to do is type it in Google. That's literally all you have to do is type it in Google. We even have if you want to use Chat GPT, I don't know much about it, but it's pretty much the same thing. You can type it in Chat GPT, and then it pulls up, the answer to your problem. So, with that being said, if you are not someone who's very smart, are you smart enough to use Google? Another thing that you can do, if you're too lazy to do that, find someone. This is going to really help you if you don't feel that you're very smart. Find someone who is much smarter than you, who loves to talk. Let me repeat that. Find someone who's much smarter than you, who loves to talk. And you want to know why that is? Because that person is going to be running their mouth. You have a problem. Depending on the level of openness, you can ask them the problem. They'll solve the problem for you. They'll give you the answer. You don't have to even do any work. Make friends with smart people. You don't even have to think anymore because it's like, oh, I done made all these friends with people much smarter than me. I can just talk to them. They got the answer. Boom. There you go. You don't have to do any work. So, with that being said, make friends with smart people and they will help you with your problems. And sometimes, even with being around people who are much more smarter than you, depending on, if you're really good at listening to them, some of that knowledge, some of their way of thinking may rub off onto you, which can help you grow your own level of intelligence. So, anyway, those are the 4 pillars of power. So, do you want one of them? Do you want to obtain all of them? It is possible to obtain all the pillars of power. You may not obtain them all at one time. But, depending on what you're going through in life, what stage you're at in life, you may be able to use one pillar of power better, more than the other. Like, for example, pillar of power of beauty. You're going to be able to utilize that more when you're younger because, as they say, looks fade. but depending on your genetics, you may be able to hold on to it. But the power of beauty, you're going to use that when you're younger. The power of intelligence, that kind of grows as you age. Social status, that usually happens later on in life. So, you can explore all of these pillars of power. You can utilize multiples at one time. You can mix and match. But those are the 4 pillars of power of society. So, that's all I have for this video. Like I said, you want to be using these pillars of power. Excuse me. You want to be using these pillars of power to your advantage, to advance in your life, to advance in your career, to advance in your relationship. So that's all I have for this one for today, and I'm going to end it right here. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Check you later. Bye bye.